And this session is speaking of generational transitions. Here are two young people who have actually had the real life, real time experience of the transitional handoff from a senior leader, established leader, to themselves, and given the opportunity to head up ministries and have all of the full experience that goes with that process. Sometimes it's smooth, but what I'm told in most cases, not so much. So with that said, I'm going to ask Pastor Jill to get us started and introduce yourself, introduce your ministry, give us some background, tell us how things moved along for you and where you are right now.
Okay, good morning again. My name is Najiyyah, but I go by Pastor Gia. I am a lead pastor of One Fire Church in the city of Newark, New Jersey. So One Fire Church is 1 year old, will be two years in October of this year. We started out in ministry. I did a church plant of Refiner's Fire Church. We were in Jersey City, New Jersey. We were there for almost 5 years. And I got a call from my bishop, Dr. Loretta Smith Johnson, who's here. And this was some years in the making. And she kept saying to me, the Lord is saying something. The Lord is saying something. I want you to pray and I want you to find out what the Lord is saying. And I called her Mother Bishop. I said, Mother Bishop, he didn't say anything to me. And so, we were praying and we had come to the understanding, and she said she wanted the Lord to tell me that she didn't want to tell me. And so the Lord spoke to my heart, and then I told her what the Lord said, and she said, that's it. So we prayed about it, and at this time she had been pastoring Shekinah Glory Christian Church for 38 years. Wow. In this one location. And had went through many things in the ministry, and she said that it was now time for her to move into the next thing that the Lord had for her. And so we came together and we started trying to do very soft transitions. And during this time, it was at the height of the pandemic, and so we were on Zoom calls and bringing the ministries together and having conversations, and it was rough. There were individuals that were just outright, this is not it. And the interesting thing is she had been preparing them for at least 4 years prior to her transitioning that she was going to do it. But the time came and the questions were, are you sure? I don't believe God said this. And so now here we are bringing the ministries together. And we decided with much prayer that we would bring the churches together and rename ourselves. And so we renamed ourselves. So we had Refiner's Fire and Shekinah Glory coming together. So we had both of these fires. We'll make them one fire, and we will move on in ministry. And so we are a year and almost 2 years in, and we've seen people come and people go. There were those that left and said, this is not God. And then they came back and said, we see God. And so we are in that space of doing it. There was a lot of resistance, but then there was also a lot that came together and said, we know this is God and we're partnering with it. And to me, that outweighed the idea that this wasn't God and we're not going to participate. The Lord has shown his hand in it. And so we're in a good space now, and we are grateful for that.
Wonderful, wonderful. So before you hand it off, number one challenge for you?
The number one challenge for me was me. And because what I had to understand is that people will be people and people will always people. And so I had to find out how to manage me in that process and not lose sight of the instruction of God because of the reaction of people. And so I had to learn how to manage me in that process, that I didn't allow my feelings, my emotions, my fears, and even the challenges to deafen my ear to the instruction of God. And so if I was able to manage me well, God could manage his people well.
So how did you get on track? What was your process from there once you recognized it?
Once I recognized that I was the problem, well, I had to recognize I was the problem, and I started going to therapy.
Okay. Fair enough. Can I pause you there for a second? Because our generations, we don't do that. We go into prayer.
Yeah.
So talk it out.
So when I started going to therapy, I realized that a lot of my issues with people and people's reaction to what was happening had a lot to do with my own personal stuff that I had to work through with father wounds and unhealthy parental relationships and things like that affected my interaction with people. So their reaction to what God was doing was I was taking it personal as they were rejecting me and not rejecting what God was doing. Not that their fight was with me and not with the will of God. And so as I started going through therapy and realizing that you got to heal from this stuff, you got to deal with the things that are dealing with you so that you don't misunderstand and misalign what's happening. And so as I began going through therapy and really working through these things, then I was able to see it's not me. And one of the things that my therapist told me to do was go buy a box of Q-tips. And I was like, for what? And she said, Q-tips, quit taking it personal.
Oh.
Don't take these things personal. So every time you feel the urge to take it personal, go get a Q-tip and realize it's not personal to you. It's that people are challenged with change. And so as I began to work through that, God began to allow me to see things from a different lens.
Wow. That's good stuff. If anyone runs by the CVS, can you get me a box of those? Pastor Jimmy, your path is a little different, right?
Definitely different. Jimmy Wilson, Pascagoula, Mississippi, the Extraordinary Church. I actually transitioned into pastoring because my parents pastored before me, and some people may say no brainer. I would say yes, brainer. Whole lot of brainer, whole lot of thinking. I was, at least in my mind, the furthest thing from wanting to be in the pastorate or even to minister the gospel at all. I wasn't interested in miracles. I was interested in money. And in spite of what the world says, there is not a lot of money in ministry. And I keep trying to convince all of my worldly friends, I promise you, it's not what you think. And so, I had to find ways to get into other things, business and things of that nature. But what happened with myself was I was in college, and my parents had been pastoring, but the Lord had birthed a church, a ministry with them, and they will tell you to this day they never felt like they were the actual pastors. They felt like they were starting something to pass on. And what they tell me is that, they didn't know that they were raising the pastor. I think it was a conspiracy, but they said they didn't know they were raising the pastor in their own home. And I do recall I was getting close to graduation, and my mother called me, and she said, your dad really needs some help in the ministry. And I remember I sarcastically replied, what do you want me to do, preach? And she was like, is that something that you want to do? I was like, no, but I'll try it. And so I remember it was January the 31st of 2011. I remember preaching my trial sermon, and everybody was like, oh, that's it. And I was like, no, it's not it. And they were like, yeah, you've been preaching like you've been preaching for 20 years. We believe the hand of the Lord is on you. And so, I fought it a bit. And I recall that my parents called me and they were saying, hey, we've got so many young people in this area and they need some guidance. And we're not asking you, to get deep into ministry, but maybe you could set a night aside just to gather some young people and give them some guidance and give them some principles and things. And so I said, okay. And so I went to social media. This was 2011. A lot of people weren't leveraging social media at that time to do ministry, but I had the whole thing, the trailer and all of that. And I didn't think anybody would come. And within the first 6 months, we just about packed that building on Thursday nights. We called it Unstoppable. And what happened was I was ministering on Sundays periodically. I would do my Thursday nights every single Thursday night. Sometimes we would be in there from 7 o'clock to like midnight. It was crazy. And God was moving. And so people started calling me pastor. They just did. And I didn't like it, but they were doing it. God was doing it. And over time, my parents were like, hey, we're going to get you ordained. And they called Bishop Warren, and then together they hogtied me. And they placed me in a chair, and a collar was placed on my neck, and hands were laid on me. And from that day forth, I was running for Jesus in that capacity. Little did I know that after ordination would come so much trouble. And the people that called me pastor before the ordination were resenting me. And then there was a war between the younger people and the older people. And there were so many things that were happening. It's a very, very long and extensive story. But
what about that war?
So,
and I should ask it this way. Yeah. What about that war from your perspective?
Okay. To this day, I still don't understand it. And when I'll tell you like this, there was so much trouble in those earlier years of pastoring. It was this weird balance because the glory of the Lord was so strong when we would have services. I mean, powerful, actual miracles, prophecy accurate. I mean, it was outstanding, but then it was like behind the scenes, there would always be some type of something. We were having meetings sometimes twice a week trying to, kill whatever was happening between people. It seemed like there was always something that was popping up. And there was a lot of differences in maybe how someone dressed or how someone addressed someone. And it was a lot of petty stuff. And the enemy was in it, to be honest. I'm not one to toss out a lot of devil stuff and demonic things. I think that a lot of people try to toss accountability by saying the devil, but legitimately, we were dealing with some demonic things that were attacking our ministry because we were really on the move. We suffered a horrible, and I mean horrible, church split, probably about 3 years in to me being a pastor. And I did not know how to navigate it. My parents, though they had experience, they had not gone through anything like that. So they really didn't know how to navigate it. So we were just together in prayer and feeling our way through. But it was the strangest thing. I'll just share this a little bit. Our worship leader, just to let you know how demonic it was only about 19 or 20 years old. But she managed at that time to drag out not only a goodly number of younger people, but a lot of olders as well, and turned them not only against me, but against my parents who had loved, served, and had given for years and years. And it was very bad. It wasn't like she started her own ministry. It was almost like she just dispersed the people and they were in confusion and didn't know where to go. Some of them didn't go anywhere. Yeah, it was crazy.
So and Pastor G, I haven't forgotten you. So in the transition, so where have you landed? Yeah. You had those experiences. Just give me just a brief snippet of where you are now, and maybe just some of the pieces that helped you to get it on track.
So interestingly enough, we were previously Set Free Family Worship Center. The split happened in about 2015. And it seemed like we bled for about a year. And after that, it was like one Sunday we had a guest speaker, and I was sitting, and the Lord spoke to me and said, I want you to change your clothes. I was like, what? And he gave me the new name. I saw the vision. I saw everything. And so I got up the next Sunday. I said, okay, this is enough of this. We're changing, we're transitioning, we're becoming anew, we're relaunching ourselves. And from that moment, it was like something turned around about 2017. And we started growing again, people got excited again, and we were doing our thing. And then comes something called COVID. And so then we had to be creative and battle through that. And we had parking lot church and whatever and what have you. So now, after, battling through that split and then having to battle COVID, we're finally back to getting to a healthy place again. We've had really, really strong members and very solid leaders. And one thing that I'll tell you about transition is that those who remain once you transition, from one leader to the next,
Solid
the
people.
people that stick with you, those are your leaders.
Good.
I can almost guarantee you, those are the people that are going to stick with you. They're going to pray with you. They're going to show up for meetings, and they're going to show up on time because there's an actual excitement of expectancy in them, and they believe in what you're doing.
And a level of commitment.
Absolutely.
Pastor Gia, the word that you would give to someone having a experience similar to yours, what would that word be?
I would say focus. And I would say focus because it is easy to become distracted. There are so many things that will vie for our attention, be it our emotions, be it people, be it financial, challenges. There will always be things that will try to come and pull us off course. And it is important, as the scripture says, to set our face like flint. We have to stay focused on the assignment, focused on the mandate that God has given. And I believe that if we stay focused and we keep our eyes on what the Lord has said, everything else will come into place. One thing that the Lord put in my heart very early in ministry, these are my people. Yeah. And as long as I understand they don't belong to me, yeah. I am not responsible for their actions or their reactions. They belong to God. My assignment is to be the line leader. And as long as I stay in the line as the line leader, they will get to where God wants them to go, and to remain and to practice humility. And one thing that I learned about the line leader, I'm a very visual person. Usually it's the shortest person that's at the front of the line. Right? They go in height order. And so as long as I remember to be the shortest person in the line and stay focused, we'll get where we need to go.
That'll preach to us little people. I'll tell you that right now. That's a good word. You hear that, Bishop LaDonna? We are number one. Okay. So last question, and we got like a minute or so. So you both are serving in lead positions with the prior leaders present. That's got to present some challenges. Jimmy's ready for a go.
I didn't want to take over. I'll say this. In the beginning, it did, because what happened was people were bypassing me and going to my parents. Now, my mother has a very interesting personality because she's very administrative. And so, at first she was, handling things, and she quickly realized, okay, this is becoming an issue. Because what was happening was the oversight was causing people to feel comfortable with disrespecting me. And so she fixed that really quick. Good. And so now people know and understand, and when people come in, they're quick to let folks know, hey, we might be what you're comfortable with because we got gray hair, but our son is the pastor, and that's where you go. And so it's been working out really well. And they serve in a supporting role of me. And sometimes people come and they're really shocked by that. Y'all sit under your son's ministry? They say, yeah, we're fine with it. Yeah.
It's wonderful.
And I will agree with that it's definitely the redirection that's necessary. But I'll also say, from the perspective of leading in a house where the prior leader is still there, it's important that as the leader that is succeeding, that you don't allow also a diminishing of the leaders that came before you, right? And so always practice in honor. And not saying, well, I'm the leader now, and you don't talk to them, you talk to me. Staying again that smallest person in the line, and remembering to honor what came before you, because they were. So always keeping that in perspective.
Does that take balance? Is there a sensitivity that's needed to maintain balance with that?
Absolutely. A sensitivity and emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence, I think is necessary, because it can become a battle of authority, of like who's in charge, if we're not careful. But I think that's why always always has to be in the forefront of our mind. This is the Lord's house, right? And keeping that in mind, and also having that balance of, and also giving them a chance to still speak, right? Because there comes this thing, and someone said it to me, make sure that your voice is stronger. For what? Like, to me, making sure my voice is stronger diminishes the voice of God. Because what if what God is saying that day is not through me? It's through someone else. It's through who came before me, or someone that walks alongside me. So I believe it's important to maintain the voice of God in the house, and not have this space of, I want my voice to be stronger so that the people know my voice. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I think having that understanding that my sheep know my voice, they weren't talking about the shepherd of the local church. We know the voice of the good shepherd, right? And the voice of the good shepherd speaks through the one that he has set in that space. So if the under shepherd, the one that, if my voice ever falters, they know the voice of the good shepherd, right? Good. And I think that we have to keep that in mind.
I wish, if we had time, I would love to hear just small portions of what a conversation might be between you who have succeeded and the ones that remain. But we don't have time. We don't have a couple hours for that. But I think that will be a good conversation to be had too. Any questions? Maybe we'll get one or two questions.
Am I understanding that there was a church merger and then an additional transition of succession?
Yes. So with us, there was, our merger and succession happened at the same time, the same day. Okay. So we came together as a ministry, and then that same day we chartered the new ministry.
So there was no time that elapsed between the merger and you stepping in as the new
No,
leader.
and then to add to that, I was an outsider.
Oh, okay.
Right? I wasn't a part of the ministry at all. I wasn't in any way like affiliated. So that also caused tension, because there were people that were in line. Right?
2 seconds.
2 seconds. People wanted to know, where did she come from? Where did she come from? They did not know, as Bishop LaDonna had spoken about, that the merger happened, or I think it was Pastor Dan, that the merger had happened a long time before the actual merger. The succession was already in place. So when they asked me where she came from, I said heaven.
The Lord sent her. Pastor Gia and Pastor Jimmy Lee Wilson, give them a hand. Thank you so much.